The other congressional race impacting our local area, the District 3 House seat, and this one has been close all night long. The 10-term incumbent Republican Walter B. Jones, challenged by Taylor Griffin, a former aide to President George W. Bush. The SBI is involved in that investigation, and here's what we know tonight. The officer on leave, Corporal James C. Johnson. The police chief, Ralph Evangelist, would not say what the incident was about, except he called it an arrest situation. One deputy shot, is going to be okay. One suspect in custody, the second suspect still on the run. We asked several questions about that today. Justin and I will bring you that report when we join you once again on WECT News at 6. Investigators are looking for the gunman who shot and killed a teenager in Rocky Mount and injured another. Residents called 911 after hearing gunfire after midnight. An 18-year-old, Devonta Eberg of Rocky Mount, died. A 17-year-old was wounded. Two other victims showed up at the hospital later with injuries from that same shooting. But there's no stormwater pipes underneath this that can make the same thing that happened in Dan River happen here.
The configuration at Dan River is different than it is here at Sutton Plant.
So everyone in the shelter could have a clean place to rest their heads this holiday.
There you go.
I made him dive. He left his feet.
Let's go live now to John Evans with the very latest. John?
Fran, behind me you can see it is still a live crime scene here in Creekwood. Several law enforcement agencies still looking for evidence near where this shooting happened about 5 hours ago. Let's paint the picture for you of exactly where we are. We are near the intersection right now of 30th Street and Clayton, actually in the Creekwood community, which is off of 30th Street and Princess Place Drive. 2 blocks off Princess Place Drive is where the shooting happened today, involving a New Hanover County Sheriff's deputy. Minutes after that shooting happened, WECT's Bailey Hicks was one of the first on the scene. She has been here all afternoon. And I want to turn to Bailey now. Tell me, Bailey, what you saw when you got here and what you've seen since then.
Like this happened, that's obviously affecting the safety of his residents.
Okay, Bailey, thanks very much. Now, this isn't the only scene that's been a part of this breaking news story. A couple of hours after the shooting happened, troopers took off from the Creekwood area and they went to a nearby apartment complex called Lennon Woods. Let's show you exactly where Lennon Woods is. It's not very far from here. It's just off Market Street near the Target shopping center, a little to the north of where we are right now. Troopers went in, they were armed, they had shields, they entered a second-floor apartment in the Lennon Woods community, and they came back out 2 to 3 minutes later. No one in custody. They left that scene and then came back here to Creekwood. Now, all this happened after the noon hour, and as we got into the afternoon, that created even more concerns for folks here because students had to start coming home from school on buses and being driven by family members. And WECT's Alex Giles has been talking to residents here in Creekwood and covering the angle of the safety of the students as they come home. Alex, what have the folks been telling you here?
Absolutely, John, it's correct.
Okay. All right. Alex Giles covering that angle. So just to recap what we have here today, one New Hanover County Sheriff's deputy shot after he and another deputy confront a suspicious vehicle. That happened into the entrance of the Creekwood community. One deputy shot, is going to be okay. One suspect in custody, the second suspect still on the run. We are expecting a news conference to begin at about 5:30. We will cover that news conference live from here in the Creekwood community. If anything breaks before that, any new information on the suspect in custody, any information on the person they're still looking for, we will be back here. We'll have it for you as well on WECT.com. For now, in the Creekwood community, I'm John Evans, WECT News.
On this day to honor America's veterans, one group of servicemen and women are still involved in a fight.
The survivors of the attack at Fort Hood are fighting for what they think they deserve. Now, they have gotten treatment for their wounds, but they say there are more benefits they cannot receive. As you'll see in my special report tonight, the vets are battling the same government they once fought to protect. The images are burned into the minds of most Americans. The chaos, the pain, the loss of life. For those who survived the attack at Fort Hood in November of 2009, the passage of time can't heal all of their wounds.
The first round went in
right here above my left eye.
Alonzo Lunsford still has one of Nidal Hassan's bullets in his body. Shot 7 times in the attack, Lunsford still suffers from partial blindness, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other conditions that he needs family help to overcome.
When I go to the toilet, it's like I'm a kid again. I have to have assistance bathing. I have to have assistance shaving, brushing my hair.
Lunsford, Matthew Cook, Sean Manning, and other survivors have gotten some treatment for their trauma, but they say the bigger deal is what they have not received. There are additional disability payments and retirement benefits worth thousands of dollars a month. They're made available specifically for soldiers hurt in combat-related incidents. But since the Army considers the Fort Hood attack a case of workplace violence, the victims do not qualify.
My Social Security disability, I was denied that 3 times, so I have to get an attorney for that.
In my case, I lost almost $2,000 a month in pay almost immediately after the shooting, which, you know, I've tried to fight that.
He's done a figure, and he's lost out at over $65,000 because he was not deemed as a combat vet.
That distinction would change, though, if the Army would classify the Fort Hood shooting as a terrorist attack. A 2011 congressional report called Fort Hood the worst terrorist attack on U.S. soil since September 11, 2001. The head of Homeland Security at the time called Hassan a terrorist. The country's top counterterrorism chief called Fort Hood a terrorist attack when he testified before Congress. For years, the Army said the terror attack classification could keep Nidal Hassan from getting a fair trial. Now that the trial has ended, I asked the Army for an update. Here's what I heard. While there has been no intelligence or findings to date that indicate Hassan was under the direction or control of a foreign element, we are currently reviewing court transcripts to determine whether any evidence to the contrary was presented at trial.
He was in direct communication with a person that was on our most wanted list, Anwar al-Awlaki, and he had telephone conversations, email correspondence, and he even sent money to this man to finance his operation that was ran by Al-Qaeda, and he received his order for his jihad from Anwar al-Awlaki.
Now, some members of Congress have tried to help the Fort Hood survivors. They've introduced bills in the House and the Senate, which would make the survivors eligible to receive the Purple Heart and give them the benefits that they're seeking. But in a report, the Department of Defense came out against that effort, saying since it's not a terrorist attack, the victims don't meet the criteria for the Purple Heart. In that same report, the DoD said, the government has vigilantly tended to the needs of the victims and their families since the tragic events of November 5, 2009.
It makes my skin crawl because it's so not true. It's a big, bold-faced lie.
Both Munley and Lunsford are out front in the fight for the Fort Hood victims. They admit at times it can be overwhelming and emotional, even for the bravest of heroes.
To have to counsel these victims like I do to this day and help them and hear what they have to go through, I'm so infuriated. And now we're coming up on 4 years and still nothing has been done to help these soldiers out.
Does it hurt?
Oh, it hurts.
When does it hurt most? When you just think about them?
Yeah, I mean, well, on the anniversaries, and when they call.
I do have their rage and their anger. The reason why I don't react that way a lot is because I'm a dad. And I don't want to be portrayed as that large, angry, unstable, wounded soldier that people fear.
Lunsford and Munley have openly criticized high-ranking military officials and even the president for not following through on promises. Promises both say they heard in the days, weeks, and months after the shooting that the Fort Hood victims would be cared for.
But don't say you're going to do it, and I know that you have the power to do it, and you lie and you don't. We're not going to fade away. As long as we all have breath in our body, we're going to talk about this thing.
My attempts to contact current and former Army officials went without a response. As for the senator and the congressman who introduced the new bills, well, I asked their offices for a comment on the inactivity of those bills so far, and again, no response to that question. I posted all of the documents from the story on our website, along with emails and links to sites that support the Fort Hood effort. There's also raw video there from the interviews I did for the story. Just click on WECT.com and it's all right there, a click away. It's time to take another closer look at a candidate who wants your vote in the upcoming May primary elections. And we are joined today by former state senator and congressional candidate in North Carolina's 7th District, David Rouser. Chris Andrade, New Hanover County Commissioner Woody White, Heather Grant, she is running for U.S. Senate. Reverend Mark Harris, Marshall Adami is running for the District 3 nomination. Taylor Griffin. Taylor is a Republican running in the primary for the 3rd District of North Carolina. We are joined by 4 of the 8 Republican candidates running for the nomination for U.S. Senate. Democratic candidates for the nomination to the U.S. House seat in North Carolina's 7th Congressional District. The 3 candidates who are seated to my left, to your right, are running for the 7th Congressional District nomination. The 2 candidates, the Democratic candidates, who are running for the office of sheriff in New Hanover County. The Republican candidates running for sheriff in New Hanover County. The Democratic candidates running for the North Carolina Senate District 8 seat. In tonight's political notebook, the start of the short session in Raleigh. Lawmakers won't debate or vote on nearly as many bills this year as they did a year ago, but there are several that will draw attention: teacher pay, coal ash, and film incentives. And they were all mentioned on day one. Plenty of activities outside the General Assembly building, but inside, lawmakers went back to work. Many saying they wanted to have a short session that's productive. Speaker Tom Tillis at the first news conference, we asked him about film incentives set to elapse at the end of the year. Tillis deferred to House Finance Chair Julia Howard, who said it's unlikely the incentives will be extended in their current form.
We will continue working with the Senate, and if there's a different way that we can do incentives, then that's what we're going to be looking at. But what we have right now is not acceptable for the body.
That's the difference that she and I would have. I believe in extending them in the current fashion to at least 2020. However, if a better plan comes up, I'll certainly take a look at it.
Pay raises for teachers dominated much of the discussion when Governor Pat McCrory submitted his new budget plan to lawmakers. McCrory says it has enough funding for all teachers to make at least $35,000 within 2 years. At a time of belt tightening, McCrory actually wants to add 19 new jobs to help tackle the issue of cleaning up coal ash ponds.
I am proposing an additional 19 positions to increase oversight in coal ash ponds throughout North Carolina. There will also be additional money in the budget for laboratory and field equipment that aids in the monitoring of our coal ash ponds throughout North Carolina.
I think we need to do everything we can to make sure that we keep a clean environment and that we clean up the problems that were caused by this. So I think it needs to be comprehensive.
And more now on the protesters and demonstrators that filled the streets of Raleigh before the lawmakers reconvened. Clanging pots and pans, one group brought their message to the Capitol. Several groups opposed to the Republican policies got together and let lawmakers know their feelings. The NAACP also announced plans to resurrect the Moral Monday protests. The North Carolina Association of Educators petitioned Republican leaders, blaming them for failing schools.